All right. Hello, friend. Thank you again for joining today, episode of Occupational Hygiene Talk. And yesterday, we stopped by, talking about, by the way, my name is Festus, Perry Guy. I'm on here on live to discuss and bring to our awareness a lot of occupational health issues that people have been having. So I'm trying to bring some tips, to life and share some of the knowledge, that we have. And in case you have any questions, you can always, send me those questions. However, to recap on what we did yesterday we went through another type of physical hazard, which is noise. And then if you are aware, we, kind of dive into how it does affect a lot of people. And not just people that work in the factory of manufacturer company, but it also affects people that work remotely as well. And then, a lot of people do DIY at home as well. So, which they are also exposed with the type of noise based on the type of instrument they're using or tools they're using, to do the activity they're doing at home. If you're also the type that, mow your lawn, at home, you might be exposed to some form of noise. And also, if you're the type that also listen to a lot of music, like music, you roll down your window while driving, you are exposed to noise. The bigger part, tip that I give to the remote worker is they have to use headphone or AirPod, right? There is the airport, to kind of communicate to their clients, via remotely, right? So they have to do that, for let's just say at least 8 hours a day for a longer period of time, right? That can be, create a lot of hazard, for a longer time as well. So, with that being said, we're going to start off, today episode. We're still on physical hazard. However, we're going to the next type of physical hazard. And then to kind of, break down the highlight today, we're going to have several parts, to this episode on vibration, right? But I'm going to start off with the part one, right? And then as you can see, I'd like to welcome everybody, to this series again. Like I said, we're going to be diving into another silent risk, that affect a lot of people, and a lot of people does not even know, it does affect them, right? So, what is vibration hazard, right? What is vibration hazard? Vibration hazard can occur when tools of machineries transmit energy to the body, right? Especially the arm or the hand and the whole body, right? So you may probably ask the question and say, how does vibration affect this part that I just mentioned, right? Remember, when you're using any of those tools of machinery, you have to hold down and it just, vibrate energy towards your body. Or maybe when you apply the force, to it, where the pressure is, that's what's going to vibrate, the gradient, right? So let's not assume you do that for a long period of time, right? You have to do that for 10, 15 years, and at the time that when you do it, you do it for 8 hours a day. Just look at the cumulative dose, like you are exposed to. Like I said yesterday, the dose is what make the poison, right? The dose make the poison. And then how does that make the poison? I make an example of using, when you go to your doctor and your doctor gave you a prescription to use two. once a day or twice a day in the morning and at night. uh, Based on the severity of your pain of your alignment that you're having, then you decide instead of taking two in the morning and two at night, I'm just going to take four. I'm gonna double the dose, right? So what you have done at that point, what seems to be safe, now it's not unsafe because you over the dose, you twice the dose, you double the effectiveness of that medicine, right? Then it is going to create, some effect, to your body, right? So with that being said, the same way with noise or vibration, right? You do that for a longer part of time, every day for a longer period of time, you are exposed to that little dose every day for a longer period of time, and that will cause accumulative dose. And when the cumulative dose does happen, it will either create a biological hazard effect on you or a total effect on your whole body, right? Biological is just internal, of your organs, when you affect the internal, the blood, or your target organs, those are biological. But when it affects your total body, is just, that's the total body as just itself. Right. So, like I said, this series is going to be in parts, right? So I presume it's going to probably be in 5 to 6 parts. As of right now, I'm going to end the part one, and then I'm going to come back, for the next part two. Thanks for joining, Mohammed, Edward, Shema, BBY. Thanks for joining. All right, I'm going to just dive into the part two of this series, right? And like I said, these does affect everybody, and I can assure you that you're going to see how it does affect you, right? When I get to some of the hazards that we have, right? Over time, this can lead to serious health issues, like, for example, like the hand-arm vibration syndrome. We have the carpal tunnel syndrome. It is caused by vibration, right? If you have to sit on the computer for a longer period of time and you just typing, you can see how my fingers is moving while I'm kind of just simulating that as if I'm typing. There's that vibration, right? So the repetitive effect that you put on your body is what causes this serious health issue, right? And then we also have circulatory and then some nerve damage. I can tell you what happens with carpal tunnel syndrome is the internal nerve damage, right? Because the carpal tunnel does affect the thumb and then just these three fingers. That's what carpal tunnel. And then there are nerves that connected, to that goes through the hand right here, right? So those nerves, if they're damaged, you begin to feel, some tingling, some numbness, and most pain, especially, in cold weather, you will feel a lot of pain, right? People that do a lot of office work, of clerical work, they have this issue of carpal tunnel syndrome, right? Those are, application. Those are indication of vibration, right? Of vibration, right? So the part two, to begin the part two, we're going to go into the common source of vibration. I kind of, talk about it in part one, but I'm going to repeat that again. So let's look at where vibration as it shows up, right? If you're the type that uses a lot of power tools, like grinder, table saw, circular saw, router, maybe at your job, maybe for side hobby, that you do at home. If you remember, anytime you turn that machine on, it vibrates, right? It vibrates. And when it vibrates, where do you think the energy goes, right? It goes to, the contact, where you have the contact with that machine, right? It's either to your hand, or to your whole body. It depends the size of that machine or tools that you're using. And it doesn't matter what the size may be, right? The bigger the size, the bigger the seriousness of the health effect that's going to you'll be affected with, right? So if you use a smaller one with a smaller power, you will feel the vibration, but you have a little effect. But like I said, the dose make the poison, right? If you have to use that little bit of machine or tools and they have an impact to your body, for every day for a longer period, it will result to cumulative effect, right? And cumulative dose, they are most of the time they are irreversible. They are irreversible. You can reverse it. When a part of your body is the connectivity, the nerve is damaged, it's hard to repair, right? Just like yesterday when I talked about the noise, and then I say, when you expose your hearing, your air with a lot of elevator like noise, there's some air cell inside your air, right? So when those air cells damage, you cannot grow them back. You can't grow them back. They die and they just die off. And when they die off, that is the beginning of your hearing loss, right? The same thing with the nerves in the body, right? So that's why we must try to take care of our body. We have to take care of our body, right? If you have to sit for a long period of time without taking breaks, right, that can damage some muscle, some nerves in your body, and then even your back, you begin to develop, back pain, right? So these are some of the hazards, we try to create awareness, to my audience to see that this does happen, right? I mean, a lot of people like to work from home. I used to do it, but I get tired, after a long period of time. I just have to resume to the office, right? But some like it, that's what they like to do. But they have to also consider the hazard that's involved, right? Being at home to do remote work is awesome, right? Because you can able to be at home. If you have kids, you can able to attend to your kids. You are not driving. Like us that we have to drive every day. Wake up early morning and drive, and then come back late at night. Stay in the traffic, right? So that is the advantage of that. But the disadvantage of that is having to sit for a long period of time, be on the computer for a longer period of time, and then exposing yourself to that rays that emitted from your computer, right? Typing for a longer period of time, now you're just exposing your body or your finger to a lot of vibration, right? And that energy does damage, those nerves that's within inside your finger, right? We have grinders, we have jackhammer, chainsaw, any of those power tools, they emitted a lot of energy. And where do you think the energy goes? To your body, to the user, right? Uh, every equipment, machinery like forklifts, right? People that work in a warehouse, they drive forklifts, all the time, and these forklifts, it might be gasoline, propane, or electric. They just vibrate, they just vibrate, right? And then when they vibrate, the vibration energy just actually goes to the user. That's actually the operator that is driving that forklift, right? Bulldozer, any of those types, people are exposed to a lot of vibration. And then these for the remote worker, right? Prolonged typing, like I said, And then on TikTok now, a lot of people do gaming, right? And then gaming, they have to sit on the computer, they have the mouse, you have to click, you have to type, you have to move, you sit in the position for a long period of time. A poor ergonomics, it does damage the nerve, right? Let's not assume you're just sitting awkward, right? You're sitting awkwardly for a longer period of time, then you begin to have pain. You may not have pain for the first time that you do it, for a month that you do it, even for a year that you do it, you may not have any pain. But thereafter, because of the prolonged awkwardness, that you put your body into, you begin to feel that pain in the long run, right? So as people that sit down for a long time, right? They don't feel it, in a moment, but they feel it along the line for a longer period of time. They have to be in that position for a longer time. That's why in my economics class, we can talk about that because that's another series, which is also part of the common workplace hazard that people are exposed to. Then I can able to demonstrate, show you the right way, to have your computer desk, your workstation, and the type of chair that you have to get, and then how to position your computer, right? Because your computer have to be at certain level and a certain distance, to you, and a certain level to your eye, right? As you just look, right? So those are economics, right? So I will talk about that, when I get to the economics series. But right now we're on vibration, so we're going to stick to that, right? Even your desk setup, like I've said, can contribute to micro vibration, right? And then that affects your wrist and your finger. I've said it, multiple times, during this part two of this series. And then, I can tell you, I've seen these, most of the time, at my job, because, I'm a board certified industrial hygiene and also a mechanical engineer. So I do this all the time to help people because my job is to make sure people are not have the job to fix the person. The job has to be made so that the person can be able to do the job properly, right? So that's the economics, right? So with that being said, I'm going to hand these part two, and then we're going to come back, for part three in a few seconds. All right, welcome back to part three of this series of vibration hazard, right? So the part three is going to be the symptoms that you have to watch for, right? I mean, the main purpose of this series is to create this awareness, right? So if I don't tell you what the symptoms is going to be, then I've not really shared the knowledge, right? For you. And I can tell you some of the symptoms I kind of really talk about through the part one and part two of this series, right? So the early signs of vibration that you have to watch for that are related to injury, they include, right? Tingling, right? So when you begin to have tingling in your hand, then that means you've been exposed to some form of vibration, right? Or maybe in the cold season, cold weather, and anytime you go outside, you just feel this tingling in your hand, or your hand is just numb, right? Numbness, right? So when it's numb, that is some sign that there's some nerve damage in your hand, right? Those are the early signs, right? So you have to watch out for that, right? Like me, even though I'm teaching this class, sometimes, the truth is sometimes I feel, part of my finger, especially this one here. I feel it. That it's just painful sometimes, right? And that pain always, comes during cold weather, right? And then what do I have to do? I just try to just kind of just massage it, and work on it every day, every time. I take a break from my computer and just do some exercise, with that hand, right? Even while I'm doing it, I can feel a little bit pain. But when you begin to do that, you are just relaxing, that tightness, within, that within your fingers, right? You just release it, right? And you do that for a long time because you're in an upward position anyway when you're typing. It's just repetition when you're typing in one motion, right? You're typing in this motion for a longer period of time, but now you have to kind of just flex it. Sometimes you have to flex it opposite direction to kind of help yourself. So there are different exercises that you can do. And sometimes we have the stress ball, right? You can use the stress ball to help, right? So that will kind of release, that tightness, within your hand. Right. Loss of grip strength, right? There's several tools out there. And then when you begin to say, because I remember every time I have to go for my physical, at my doctor's office, they always tell you to, kind of just, do your hand like this and the pull to make sure if you still have some grip, right? So that is just to test, right? But if you don't have it, that's to tell you that you might probably be exposed to some vibration. And that does not mean that you are using some power tools, right? It's just because you work on the computer, you work from home, you work on the office, and then we're used to this technology, and then we are not aware, that there's some risk that's involved too. And that's why I'm here. I'm bringing that to you live so you can see, And then if you have any question, like I've always told you, can drop it, drop the comment for me, drop it in the chat. I'm going to reply to it. And then if you have to learn more about occupational health or occupational hygiene, and I can bet you it's a rewarding career. But it's very, very, it's science based. It's science based and also engineering based, right? So if you're the type that like to be in that science world, I can tell you that this is a rewarding career that a lot of people does not know. And you can check Indeed or LinkedIn, you will see tons of open. There's jobs everywhere. That's the main focus, why I'm doing this live, so I can create this awareness, for my audience, so they can see, there's the opportunity that a lot of people does not see, that is out there, right? Everybody's not going to be engineer and everybody's not going to be a doctor or nurse, right? So there's this profession that, I mean, it's science based, but it is there. It's I won't say it's easy, but if you want to go to college too, you can check it online. Industrial hygiene or occupational health is out there. It's very, very rewarding. I've been doing this for a little bit, over uh, over 12 years. Prior to that, I used to be a mechanic engineer and then safety engineer. And then now I'm doing industrial hygiene. I was able to, and now I'm able to use everything that I've learned in school, to do this industrial hygiene. And then it's very beneficial to me. Right. And then the third one on the list about, because we're still in part three, and we're talking about the symptoms, that you have to watch for when you've been exposed, to vibration hazard, right? And then we said number one is tingling and then numbness in fingers, or loss of grip is the second one. And then the third one, we call it white finger, right? White finger is Raynaud symptom, right? It's Raynaud symptoms, right? Is it Raynaud syndrome? Raynaud syndrome. So this is called white finger, right? Because when it just you lost some blood flow in that part of your hand, and it becomes white, right? And then just call it, white finger. But in ergonomics, it is called Raynaud's syndrome. But these symptoms often appear gradually, right? So that's what you have to watch for, right? Because, like I said, most of the hazard that a lot of people are involved with remotely or in the factory settings, they people don't know that those hazards does exist until it has accumulated, right? And then you can reverse it no more. Then you now begin to take, prescription, right? So these are what we have to do now. Do some exercise, do some yoga to relax your body. Do massage, right? Go to massage, go to the spa and do some massage. Relax your muscle, so that you don't get stiff and it begin to hurt in the long run, right? And at the time, you can reverse it anymore, right? Because it's too late, right? So that's why it's better, right now, just for me to bring this awareness to you guys, so you can be able to see, what are some of the stuff that we are faced with, but we are overlooking, right? There's a lot of it, right? But like I said, this episode that I'm doing is about uh, is about physical hazard, right? So when I'm done with physical hazard, with all the different type of physical hazard, then I will go to the next, which is chemical hazard, then economic hazard, psychosocial hazard, environmental hazard, right? So those are type of the hazard. Right now, I'm on uh, physical hazard, and I'm on second type, which is the vibration hazard. Right. So, with that being said, I'm going to end this part because I don't really want to go over. I don't want people to get bored because I want you to get, this information, right? Having a longer video can cause boredomness, right? So I don't want you guys to get bored. I don't want to lose you in the middle of the video. However, we'll be back in some few seconds for part 4. All right. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for everybody that's joining because I kind of turned my camera backward. I can see all my viewer. I apologize for that because if you look at my previous video, every time I kind of do the front camera, and when I'm trying to write something on the board, it looks like I'm left-handed, right? And then some of all my stuff is just on the left hand side. People can't really see it. Just to make it clear. So that's why I kind of just, use the back camera so you can able to see the board well. And if I have to do calculations, you can able to follow. However, I'm gonna drink some water. I am thirsty. Been talking for over 30 minutes. All right. Welcome back to part 4 of vibration hazard. So the part 4 is about prevention and control. And then here's how to reduce your risk, how to control yourself from vibration hazard, right? Now we have recognized that the hazard is there. We've identified some of the earlier symptoms. So how do we prevent it? And then if we observe them, how do we control them, right? Number one, where anytime we are using any power tools that generate some energy and causes the tools to vibrate and the energy is being released to our body, you can control and prevent that by using anti-vibration gloves, right? Vibration glove is going to help you to prevent that, right? To control that hazard for having direct contact with your hands. You have to limit, number two, you limit exposure time. You take breaks, right? How do you limit that? You have to take breaks, right? For example, if you have to type, your job is to sit on the computer for 8 hours. Every hour, try to take a break. Take a break, just kind of squeeze your hand in this manner, walk around so you can stretch yourself because you've been sitting down anyway for a longer period of time. Just take a break. And it's recommended to take a break. Sometimes someone will say every 30 minutes, but if you take too much break and you have to walk and your supervisor is watching you, that might get you in trouble, right? So I would say take a break at least every hour. Take a break at least every hour. And maintain tools to reduce excessive vibration, right? Maintain tools to reduce excessive vibration. When you know your tools is damaged or maybe it's wearing out, you can just use or try to maintain it or buy another. Sometimes it might be costly, but maintenance is going to prevent, the vibration, right? And sometimes, what I've seen in the field, right? Because I work in a chemical plant, right? What I've seen in the field is there's some anti-vibration mat, you know, that we have to kind of just lay to cover the machine or put under the machine so that it absorbs that energy, right? So the mat is going to absorb that energy so that it's not impacting, the operators, right? So that we use. Or sometimes, we just report that and then they log in the PM log so that maintenance can able to routinely, maintain those, right? So, which is the same thing with some of the stuff that you have at home. I remember having a blender uh, not too long ago. So the blender is just there. I guess it's getting old, and then every time I try to use it, it vibrates. I make it very lightning, right? So that means in that point, I'm not only just exposing myself to vibration, I'm also exposing myself to noise, right? At the same time, right? So that is two as that combo, trying to work at the same time, right? So if it's damaged, it's making too much noise, get it over, get another one to prevent yourself. Because why? If you don't do that, that can cost you a serious health, which is going to cost a lot of money in the long run. That will cost more than the microwave or the blender or the power tools that you're trying to keep, right? So you have to be watchful for that. And then the last one, but not the least, you have to use ergonomic setup for remote work. I kind of explained that earlier. What is ergonomic setup, right? Make sure your workstation is ergonomically set up or designed. Your chair is ergonomic chair, and then your computer is at the appropriate height, because you have to have like or 30 degrees to your eye anyway, and it shouldn't be looking like this, because at that point, what are you doing? You are putting stress to your neck, right? So you do that for a long time, then you begin to have neck pain. And you don't want to be looking down as well, right? Because that is too low, that's going to cause some serious injury to your neck, and you're also putting pressure to your back as well, right? So it have to be in adequate amount of level, like eyes, and at an angle that's not going to cause you any pain. And also the lighting within your office must be adequate, right? Because if you don't have enough light, that's going to hurt your eye. And if you have too much light, that's also going to hurt your eyes. So you have to use the adequate amount of lighting, appropriate work desk for you to work on so that you don't injure yourself, right? I can tell you it's very costly. I've seen some doctors that do some, procedures, some surgery on their hands. That costs a lot of money, you know. General practice doctor doesn't do that, right? They have specialists. When you need to go to a specialist, to take care of what you're going through, that become more expensive, right? That become more expensive, right? So you have to be watchful there for that. Like I said, these series that I'm doing is just one part of industrial hygiene program. We do a lot of stuff, ventilation, indoor quality here, radiations. We manage those. We do a lot of mold sampling, a lot of asbestos sampling, a lot of engineering type of work in how to calculate the balance of air within the room or within an office or within a space, right? And then we do that, several stuff that we do. Economics is part of what we do. And then we try to handle some of these hazards that's involved too, try to help our workers, right? So if you're using tools daily, using this, you must try to track your exposure time, right? Remember, I keep going back to the dose make the poison, right? The dose make the poison. So if you use, regulation wise, if you're exposed, there's an exposure time that we use, right? For 8 hours time with an average, might be, just for example, might be uh, a vibration of 60 hertz, right? And then, however, your 8 hours time with the average that you work, you expose yourself to 100 or 150. So within the exposure time that you've been exposed yourself, you have exceeded, the acceptable level that is determined safe for any human being or any worker, right? So you have to be very, very careful. So that's why, I said in some of the prevention that you have to take a break the exposure time, right? Because if you continuously doing the same thing for a long time, you are accumulating that first exposure because now you are multiplying it, right? But if you take a break in between that exposure time, you are break the chain of exposure. And that's how to prevent it, right? That's what you do by, it's just like you working on the computer. I remember when I was in school and then I'm on deadline, to finish my research. I'm always sitting in the computer for a whole day without taking a break, right? But thank God, I didn't hurt myself because, I was kind of help myself along the line, to do some flexes, but in that time I wasn't because I just want to submit, those assignments at that point, right? But let's just assume that's what I do, right? I have to do research, write research paper for all these 15 years or 20 years, right? You will see how I probably working, probably been working, right? Because I've been sitting for a long period of time. So we have to break the chain of exposure. And how do we do that? Every hour, just take 5 minutes break. Every hour of sitting or of working on the computer, of gaming, of looking at your computer, of sitting in one position, or of doing a repetitive work. You are doing a work repetitively for a longer period of time, break that chain of exposure. Every hour, take a 5 minutes break, and that is going to reset back, your body. Right? So I'm going to stop here for the part 4. Then we will come back for part 5 and part 6, just to wrap it up. Thank you guys for joining. All right, welcome back. This is the last part 5 and 6. I'm going to put it together, or part 5 anyway. Right? So this is the part 5 of this series, this vibration hazard. And then this is some of the misinformation that goes around. Let's put this here to create some space. These are some of the misinformation that goes around. Today's topic is vibration, right? Vibration, right? So we are right here on the mailbox. Right. So one of the myths that a lot of people say that we hear is only construction workers need to worry about vibration. That is not true. That is inaccurate, right? The truth, if you follow me from part 1 to this time, from the beginning of this series, you will know I have emphasized on remote worker, on factory worker, on gamer, on somebody that work, in the office, right? I've emphasized that over and over again, right? So the truth is, office workers are exposed to vibration. Office workers. Two, gamer. Because gamer tends to sit for a long time. They work on the computer. The only tool that they are is the computer, right? And they have to type all the time. They move the mouse. If the mouse is not ergonomically designed, it's going to hurt their hand. That's cobblestone right there, right? So we have to be watchful of that. Remote. The third one is remote professional. Um, Professionals, right? All these groups of people are all at risk, right? They are all at risk, right? So it's not just construction workers, it's everybody. Even I'm going to add DIY slash, right? Those garage people, right? People that work in the garage. I'm just calling garage worker. Right? They also exposed because they have all the tools at home. In my house, I have all the tools. I love to do a lot of DIY, right? I have the tools, right? So I'm also exposed to it. But how do I kind of prevent and control myself? Anytime those machines, those power tools are on, I make sure to wear my air. I wear the air plugs and air. So I use dual protection for noise, and then I wear gloves. I have my eyeglasses on to prevent myself. And this is not just because I'm a professional in this. It's just because I know and I understand that health is wealth, right? When the health is gone, you can buy it. If not, all the billionaires in the world, they will die, from health issues. They were able to just, or use their money to buy, those health, right? So, why am I telling you? You just have to help yourself with this. So don't go around saying that, okay, all this milk is only people that's working in the construction industry that are exposed to vibration, right? And then especially with poor posture, people that just sit down and they sit upwardly, working on computer. You can see how I bend my back, working. That's not the proper posture, to work on the computer, right? However, like I said, when I get to the economics part of my series, I can able to show you, the right way that you can sit, right? And then repetitive motion, like just working on the computer for a longer period of time, that is also create an answer. However, right, question and answer, and to wrap this up, to really wrap this up, and I hope I'm able to bring some insight to all my on this for a lot of people that is viewing me right now. Like I said, please, I said, help me to share this live, help me to share this video, help me to like it, help me to comment. And also, if you can help me to achieve my goal as well. And I really appreciate it because the goal is there. I was supposed to get like 10 goals, just please, if you can help, I will appreciate that as well. Right? In the light of that, we going to come back tomorrow with another series, right? So this is the second episode. This is the second series under the first episode of physical hazard, and this is going to take us for a long time. Probably throughout this week, I will go live, throughout this week to bring this information to you, right? So tomorrow we will talk about lighting hazard, right? Lighting hazard, how your workspace lighting affect your health and productivity, right? So, we're going to dive into that tomorrow. I'll come to life and then we can able to share some insight. And then, if you have any question, any friends, any family, any cousin, that they are exposed to this type of stuff, tell them to watch the video so they can able to get some insight with that, right? You can refer them, send the video to them, or just, or share my handle with them as that simplified PGS so they can look at it. Like I said, to keep this life going, please, I would like you to, comment and follow and also, help me achieve my goals as well. With that being said, I would say stay safe and protect your hands. And now, see you again tomorrow. Thank you. Bye bye.